Hi creative friends, this is Soraya and thank you so much for being here. Today I'm going to do a video on oil pastels and how we can successfully use them in our mixed media art. Now there are some misconceptions about oil pastels, and the number one is that because oil and water don't mix, that we can't use them in our mixed media art because most art supplies that we use tend to be water based, and so it makes logical sense. But I'll do a demonstration later to show you how there are plenty of art supplies that we can mix beautifully with oil pastels. Now, the very first thing I want to talk about are the different grades of oil pastels because they're not all created equally. This is a low grade, cheaper oil pastel, and I have lots of different brands here. Some of them are Demco, Soundy, Gallery, Prima, and normally I would not recommend purchasing a cheap set of art supplies, but when it comes to oil pastels, I think that this is a valuable addition to your stash, and I'll tell you why. The reason being is that we don't always want a soft, creamy, easy to blend mark. Like sometimes we want a hard mark. And as far as I understand, when they make these pastels, they use pigment, they use a little bit of wax, they use oil, and the higher the ratio of pigment and oil, the more expensive and creamier it's going to be. So you can get a set of say 12 or even 24 for anywhere from $10 to $12. And I think these are a great addition to have cheap oil pastels in your stash. So now I'm going to talk about the Portfolio water soluble oil pastels. These are basically magic. I'm not sure how they make them because these are oil, but you can use them wet or you can use them dry. The colors are really rich and beautiful and vibrant. And a pack of 24 of this is only like $12, and you can even get a set of 12 for under $6. Now, I'm not sure if these are readily available all over the world. I've only ever seen them in America. So if there are people listening to this that are from all different parts of the world, if you could leave a comment below and tell me if you own this set and if they are available where you live. So if you just say yes, they're available in the country that you're from, that would be so helpful just to know where you can find them. But if you can get your hands on a set of these, I totally recommend them. They are so valuable in mixed media art because they're already water soluble. So it's going to mix seamlessly with all of your mixed media art supplies in every stage, like your first layers, your middle layers, and your last layers. So I highly recommend purchasing a set of these Portfolio oil pastels. So now I'm going to talk about the Faber-Castell. This is a set of 24, and as you can see, they are very well used and loved. I use them for sketches and experiments, and this little set probably cost me about $15. It's a middle of the road quality, so it's not too soft and it's not too hard, and Faber-Castell is a very well-respected brand. So if you are going to purchase these, I don't think you can go wrong. Now, these over here are Caran d'Ache. They are a European brand. I'm not sure if they're made in Switzerland or Sweden, but these are called Neo pastels, but they are oil pastels and they're very pricey. 24 of these are going to set you back about $80. And this is a brand new set. I haven't even used them, so I can't wait to dive in. But if you're a beginner, I wouldn't recommend something so pricey. Now, these are Holbein. I only have singles in these, but I think you can purchase a pack of 36 for about $30. Now, Holbein is a Dutch company and they have a long history of being a top of the line art manufacturing company. So I don't think you can go wrong with these. And I would label these pastels to be a mid to high grade quality. This over here is a brand from Korea. I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, so it's Mungyo YO. And this is a pack of 48. I purchased it because I really love the wide variety of colors and tones. And I've tested them, a few of these, and I think the quality is probably a mid-grade, and they are professional quality. And this pack is probably going to cost you about $20 to $25, but I'm sure they come in smaller sets as well. Now, I have left the best for last. This over here is Sennelier. It is the top of the line, the industry standard, the cream of the crop. Sennelier, Sennelier, Sennelier. These colors are decadent, lush, gorgeous, vibrant, creamy, delicious, luscious. I could go on and on and on. Sennelier actually invented the oil pastel for Pablo Picasso. So in 1948, Picasso walked into the Sennelier store, which is located across from the Louvre in Paris, and he asked the owner to invent an art supply for him that he could use on any surface without it being primed. And the owner of the store at the time, his name was Henry Sennelier. He was a grandson of Gustave Sennelier, the man who started the whole Sennelier brand. He took a year off work and he invented the oil pastel for Picasso. I think the original array of colors was 50 or 52, and these are simply brilliant. Now, they do tend to be pricey, but to me, they're worth every penny. And let me just tell you, I have had the good fortune and the privilege of visiting the Sennelier store a few times, and it is such a wonderful, magical experience. It is part mad science lab, part art studio, tiny, quaint, humble, um, full of history, just the best little shop in all the world. And I absolutely adore it. So this jumbo oil stick is probably going to set you back about, I think, because I bought it at the original Sennelier store, and I think I paid about 14 euros for it. Now, the prices are going to vary depending on the colors because different pigments cost a different amount of money. So the jumbo sticks tend to be between, I want to say between 10 to 14 euros. And then the small sticks probably cost between 3 to 6 euros, depending on the color. And this little set over here, it's a Sennelier set of 24, probably cost about between $55 and $60. And it is a beautiful little set that I use sparingly. So now I'm going to do some demonstrations. And I just want to show you how oil pastels can mix just fantastically with other types of art supplies. So I'm going to use this cheap oil pastel over here, and I'm going to show you like how we can make different marks. Now, another misconception about oil pastels is that they are very difficult to use, and I don't find that to be true at all. I kind of think of it as a pencil. You can make really evocative and dynamic and expressive marks with this oil pastel. So I'm gonna hold it like so, and if I press down really hard, I can make a really rich mark. But then if I ease up, I can make some really beautiful lines and marks. And you can also use it on its point, or you can use it on its side like so, and go this way. So now I'm going to use a Holbein, which is mid to expensive. And I'm going to make some beautiful lines and marks here. And now I am going to use the water-soluble portfolio. And I'm going to use it dry first. And now I'm going to use it wet. And I think I'm also going to use a Faber-Castell, just because a lot of people do tend to use this as a first set, because it is a really beautiful, very well made oil pastel. So I'm just going to use one of these and just make some beautiful lines there. And now I am going to use a Sennelier. So, I mean, just really lush marks. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this Lyra water-soluble graphite crayon, and it can be used wet or dry. So first I'm going to use it dry, and we're going to see. And it's going to go over. So as you can see, it goes perfectly fine over all of those. And now I'm going to use it wet, and I have no issues with any resisting of the oil pastel. So that goes over perfectly fine. Now I'm going to use the Inktense, and I'm going to go over it dry, and I'm going to use it wet. And now I am going to use graphite, just a graphite pencil, and I have no issues with it. Now I'm going to use my Stabilo, and I'm going to use it wet. So I have no issues with it. I'm going to use a marker. And the marker is going to go over top of it, but if you use it repeatedly, it might ruin your marker because the pigment from the oil pastel could get onto the tip of your marker and it might ruin it. So you may not want to do that. It will go over top of it, but it's probably not going to last very long. And the pen goes over just fine. And this is a colored pencil. So now I'm going to try an ink. So this is a Liquitex ink, and I'm just going to put a little bit over top of here. And let's just see what is going to happen here. So as you can see, it goes over perfectly fine. Even over the Sennelier, there's no issues. Now I feel a little bit of resistance on my brush, but it's perfectly fine, and it's going over that as well. Now I'm going to use an acrylic paint, and I'm going to use my finger, and I'm just going to use a motion like up and down. So if I put it like so, it's totally fine. Now the issue you might have is if you try to smush it into the oil pastel. It's still possible, but depending on the colors you're using, it could turn into a mess. So generally, I tend to stay away from doing that. Now, the other misconception about oil pastels is that they are a crayon. And so when we think of crayons, you might think of something you used in elementary school. I mean, it was great to have, but the colors weren't that vibrant. Sometimes the marks worked, sometimes they didn't. And oil pastels are not crayons. They look like crayons, and you can use them in the same way, like when you're holding it, like in its physicality, but they are not crayons at all. Crayons are made out of wax, and while oil pastels may have a tiny bit of wax in them just to keep their shape, they are mostly made of oil and other binders. So that is not true. Like, oil pastels are not crayons. Now, they can tend to be messy. So just say you're working in your art journal and you close the page, the oil pastel can transfer from one page to another, in which case you can just go to your kitchen, and if you bake and you have parchment paper or wax paper, you can cut a size and you can just slip it right into your art journal pages, and that way there'll be a barrier between the pages. Or you can just rip a page out of a cheap lined notebook and stick it into your art journal. For me personally, I don't really care if it transfers. It's not a big deal to me. Now, another recommendation I have is that if you are new to oil pastels and you want to purchase a set, I normally don't recommend buying sets of any art supply, because what happens when you buy a set is a couple of things. The first thing is you end up with a whole bunch of colors that you don't really use, so it's kind of a waste. And the second thing is you might think that, oh, I'm going to use oil pastels, but then you buy a set of, say, 24, and then you end up, after using it for a couple of weeks, you're like, oh, I don't really like this. And so now you're stuck with a set. So it's just easier and better to buy singles for most art products. But the only exception I'm going to make is that when you're first starting out, there is a um, there is value to purchasing a small set, because just say I purchase a small set right here, and I don't like, just say I don't like these two colors, and so I'm not going to use them. So what I would do is I would use these two colors to experiment and to learn. So I would make a whole bunch of marks and drawings and, layers, and say, okay, what kind of marks do I like? What don't I like? How is this going to work for me? What can I mix this with, et cetera, et cetera. And then when I go to actually using the art supplies in my art journal, I'm going to use the colors that I do like. So in this way, you haven't wasted these art supplies over here. You've actually got a lot of value from them because they're a learning tool. So, just be cognizant of, when you do purchase a set. Like, I wouldn't buy a set of a really expensive art supply if I didn't know that I was going to use it. But, this a set of 12 would cost you like $6. So that's actually very reasonable. So I'm just going to show you a few ways that I have used them in my art journal. And I'll show you over here. So this is oil pastel, and that's oil pastel over there. And I've also used it over here, and that's probably Sennelier, because I've really blended the two blues and a little bit of the white. And I really love the marks, and I've used it over here too. And I really love the marks that oil pastel can bring to the page. And over here, I have used it very sparingly. So I've used it as if this was a cake and the oil pastels were frosting. I use them last and very, very sparingly. So I just wanted to highlight the figures a little bit. And so I just use them very lightly, but it still gives your page a lot of oomph and pizzazz. So anyways, I hope that this has given you some new ideas on how to incorporate the oil pastel into your mixed media artworks. And thank you so much for watching till the end, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.